Hello everyone, thank you for paying attention and listening to my presentation on Costa Rica. The topic of this particular presentation is the economic development, growth, and inequality of the country of Costa Rica. My name is Ted Beckman, and this is my third class at Colorado Christian University, and I really enjoyed this particular one. Hope you all had good success and wish you good luck in the future. To start off, just introduce you to Costa Rica. It's translated in Spanish as the Rich Coast. It's $85.2 billion in gross domestic product, with a growth of 3.8% through 2017. They had an inflation rate of 1.7%. and an unemployment rate of 8.1%, which is a decrease from 2016 from 9.3%. Their exports include bananas, coffee, and sugar cane mainly. In 2009, they joined an agreement with the rest of the Latin countries to increase the economy, and they were able to increase the economy on insurance as well as telecommunications. I think the reason why I picked Costa Rica was an example of this picture right here. I've never been there, but I would like to travel there sometime, so that's why I selected Costa Rica. But the reading about their economics and how they have developed and their resiliency was fascinating as I dove deeper into this particular country. But their challenges of their economic development are their fiscal situation, their taxation, as well as their stubborn inequality. Inequality features, the inequality will be featured throughout this presentation, and this shows the difference in the disparity between the ultra-rich and the poverty level. As you can see, that impacts the growth and sustainability of the economy in Costa Rica. Poverty, unfortunately, has not changed over the last 20 years. 20 to 25% of the population is below poverty level. However, despite these challenges, Costa Rica does remain one of the most prosperous in all of Central America. Costa Rica did gain its independence from Spain in 1821. It consists of 7 provinces. One interesting fact about Costa Rica is that they did dissolve their armed forces in 1948, and their government only contributes 17.2% to the gross domestic product. The government only contributes 17.2% of the gross domestic product of the country. Just for reference, the United States spends over $610 billion on their armed forces, which is more than several other countries combined. In 2015, Costa Rican Finance Ministry proposed a tax reform bill that was to increase the sales tax and income tax to raise revenue by $1.1 billion. The Finance Ministry handles all policies remaining to fiscal and trade as well. In 1950, the Central Bank of Costa Rica was established, and they have complete autonomy to set foreign exchange and monetary policies for the entire country. Although Costa Rica has achieved economic growth over the years, the inequality has been impacted significantly. The government is trying to change the issues relating to inequality by incorporating transparent and accountable public policy, which is evident when we start talking about their healthcare system. It's amazing the differences between the United States and Costa Rica. And myself, I am in the healthcare industry, and I found that fascinating as well. So the economy currently focuses on tourism and some exports. They do rely heavily on imports as well, and their healthcare focuses on social spending, and over that they've seen a decrease in infant mortality rate. They have similar expenditures on healthcare as the United States. However, they have obviously a significantly different gross domestic product than the United States. So despite these values, the increasing level of inequality of income continues to make the country vulnerable to change because of those inequalities. So just a quick graph or not a graph, but a example that shows the difference between Costa Rica and the United States. Gross domestic product per capita. You can see there, population below the poverty line. Unemployment rate is about equal, 7.8% to 8.1%. The United States is 4%, only 4% more than is 4% more than Costa Rica. And this is the reference to the healthcare stats that I found very interesting. Is life expectancy is United States has 1% more or higher years of life expectancy. The average body mass index is less than Costa Rica. And the most amazing fact is the healthcare cost per capita, $289.70 versus $6,000.96.20. So 21 times more expensive in the United States than in Costa Rica. So their trade is based on these four pillars, part of the World Trade Organization, the Central American Economic Integration System. They have a bilateral free trade agreements and bilateral investment agreements. Their major trade partners are with the United States and the European Union, almost 40% with the United States, and Europe at nearly 20%. The countries are classified by how they're developed. So they're classified in three different classifications: developed economies, economies in transition, and developing economies. Costa Rica is dependent on imports since the year 2000. They've had a trade deficit, so they are a developing economy. The president-elect at the time in 2010, Laura Chinchilla, she was the president from 2010 to 2014, but her platform was that she would increase Costa Rica's export business to get it to be the first developed country in Latin America. So they do have a fair trade agreement with coffee exports for sugarcane with the European Union. The Perez Zeledon region in southern Costa Rica has 8,000 members and employs over 700 workers. What's interesting about their company and their culture is that they focus on reforestation from their crop, water conservation, and education opportunities to educate their people about the environment. So there's the big differences, or the big point, I guess, with Costa Rica is that first slide I showed, paints a great picture of tourism and what attracts people to Costa Rica, but the poverty and inequality is significant, specifically the inequality of income. But employment is a big cause of that. The people that are 13 to 17 years of age are out of school, and there's frequency of children that have not completed 6 years of school by age 15 is what impacts their poverty levels. They have a high immigration rate from Nicaragua. Individuals or immigrants from Nicaragua are fleeing the country and going to Costa Rica because of the opportunity. So that further leaves them impoverished, and the Costa Rican people think that the Nicaraguans are increasing their poverty levels because they're getting jobs that Costa Ricans should be getting. The other thing is that social aid is distributed in a dispersed manner rather than focusing on the bottom 5 or 10% of poverty level. So the economy is still based on a mercantilistic system, which relies heavily on imports, but the attempt is to restrain imports and to encourage exports in this type of system. So the skilled and unskilled workers really affects the poverty level and the inequality. The time frame from 1980 to 1985, the high school I almost said unemployment, but enrollment dropped by 10%, and it did not reach normal levels until the year 2000 or 1999. So it took almost another decade to get that back to normal. And what that created is a whole generation of Costa Ricans that were not available to be part of secondary education. I shouldn't say not available. There was 10% of them that were forced into working rather than going to school. So that made their labor force, 60% of them, unskilled. New jobs were created, and when those jobs were created, they required skilled laborers rather than unskilled laborers, and that further widened the inequality gap in Costa Rica. So I believe some of the economic policies to focus on would be incentives to finish high school, free or low cost. Let me fix this really quick. There we go. Free or low cost tuition to colleges to ensure that their indigenous people are educated, and then offer that opportunity to those people rather than to avoid any immigration issues or further the immigration problem. Labor markets need to support disadvantaged workers, specifically women. And one of the references said one of the motives was to fund childcare for all Costa Ricans that are working. The labor costs are currently at 36.5%, and reducing that would be another economic advantage. So overall, increase the quality of education. 10% of the population cannot read or write. Increase the minimum wage of low qualified workers, and control wages of skilled qualified workers. Control wages. We don't want to decrease those wages, but we want to control the amount of increase that the wages of skilled workers have to close that inequality gap. Another thing would be to increase the exports of native and wild food crops. This would increase food security amongst the Costa Ricans and the natives and their nutrition. Also provide some labor for some of those unskilled workers. And if you're paying a higher minimum wage for those unskilled workers and you do have opportunities for them, that inequality gap could decrease. Also build and maintain their infrastructure, purified water systems, sanitation systems, and all of these policies should include the indigenous people to participate in leadership roles to guide those interventions. So Costa Rica does have a model for other countries. Their healthcare was pretty fascinating to learn more about, just because I'm in that industry and I found it fascinating. Their resiliency, how they have been able to grow economically. However, the inequality is further spreading apart, focusing a lot on tourism, a lot on bringing people to their country. And their national defense spending was very interesting to me as well. So just to read the bottom paragraph there, Costa Rica needs to find an answer for the inequality that exists in the nation. Separation from the top and the bottom needs to decrease. They need to focus more on quality of life for all citizens. In order to sustain this, the country's positive economic policies, they must rely on imports to become a developed nation, as mentioned by President Laura Chinchilla, and not rely so much on imports. Not rely so much on, they need to not rely on imports and gain more exports. Educate the indigenous people and create innovative ways to produce a trade surplus. So that's my take on Costa Rica and their economics, and a few of my references, which will be available if you want to see them. Thanks. Have a good rest of the